Alright, what's going on, everybody? So, I'm here to bring you guys my review for episode 5 of Noblesse. And so far, I gotta say, they've done a phenomenal job in terms of the pacing of the show, in terms of building up the relationships with these characters, because that's basically what they've been doing the past couple of weeks. They've been building up the relationship between these characters, kind of letting you get familiar with these characters, their motivations, and just sort of building that camaraderie between Rai, Tashiro, Manabu, Regis, and all of them, and Frankenstein, and all of them. And even with last week's episode where we got two of the members of DA5, Tao and Takio, and please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing if I mispronounce any names, please forgive me. But with last week's episode we got Tao and Manabu meeting up in the real and basically done building this friendship, this relationship up, and you even got Manabu calling Tao boss. Takio meeting Sarah and Tashiro and sort of befriending them and kind of building a relationship with them. Like, they've done a great job in terms of kind of having that build up, because they've been building up to this confrontation between DA5 and Rai, Frankenstein, M21, and all of them. They've been building up to this, and I think this week's episode was the payoff. This was it was the start of the big confrontation. With this week's episode, a few different skirmishes, because I don't really want to call it all fights. It was a big battle overall, but there were really just a few skirmishes between our heroes, our main characters, and DA5. And I gotta say, this was a very entertaining episode. For those of y'all that might have been a bit, for those of y'all who've been waiting for this for like the past few weeks and kind of felt like maybe this was a bit slow in terms of how they've been handling things, where it hasn't been, admittedly so, it hasn't been a lot of action in this show so far. Like, we've had a few fight scenes and stuff here and there, but I think this episode had like the most of it. It's more of a straightforward episode when you think about it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. With this week's episode, we learned that Sarah and Regis, they have this sort of connection where, like, if one of them go unconscious, they can tell where the other person is at. They can kind of tell. They can kind of. They have some sort of like I don't want to say telepathic, but they basically have some sort of connection. And so Sarah basically figures out, or she senses that Regis is in trouble, so she goes to find him. And at the end of last week's episode, I believe his name is Shark. Yeah, Shark. So like Shark and Hammer, they had captured Regis, Tashiro, and Manabu, and so she goes to their location, and then Frankenstein and Rai, they they kind of figure out that, okay, uh, Regis was supposed to be meeting up with Manabu and Tashiro, and they're concerned about them, so they end up going to DA5's location, and then that's how this whole confrontation sort of starts out. And with this week's episode, there's a lot that I like. So first of all, besides just the action in general, I thought that the fights that we got, with I think my favorite, and again, I kind of don't really want to call it a fight overall, but there were like several different skirmishes. I think like my favorite sort of fight scene or whatever is where we have Frankenstein, like, I want to say by like the middle of the episode or like close near the end, where we have Frankenstein fighting against Takio. And I like the weapon that Takio uses, that gun that he uses. And overall, I'd say like the animation, it's like, I don't want to say it's like the most impressive thing in the world, but it was good. It was okay. We also got to see Regis go all out, and then also M21. M21 spent part of the episode really just wrestling with what to do with this whole situation. On one hand, he wants to keep his promise to M24. He wants to learn about his comrades and learn their names and everything. And he's honestly just wrestling with this idea of whether or not he should even help these kids, because uh, on one hand, it's his whole fault that the kids, that Tashiro and Manabu and even Regis are in this situation to begin with. but then at the same time he wants to kind of keep his promise to his friend. And so I like that there was that moment where he had to make that definitive, tough decision to actually fight back against Shark, and he even feels like he betrayed his friend, and that's something like I like that they have really they've really focused on his character, the past couple of weeks, and I definitely appreciate that. Um, Other than that, I think the only other thing that I have to say about this episode, there was that end credit scene at the end. That was pretty funny. I almost missed it. I'm glad that I didn't. But if you haven't seen the episode yet, make sure that you stick past the credits or like fast forward past the credits, and then you'll see a pretty funny end credit scene with Rye. I won't spoil what that is. And then also, one other thing before I kind of close out, we got to see Kranz also fighting back. We got to see Kranz fight, and we got to see the members of DA5 all use this drug, this enhancing drug that, if I remember correctly, Shark used it last week or the week before. We got to see them use this drug that enhances their power. We got to see Kranz basically take on this this kind of more bulky sort of form. I like what they did with like the effects, like what happens to the character's eyes once they use it. Like it's something that as Regis says multiple times that these characters, these people that have modified themselves or have been modified rather have betrayed their humanity, and there's this whole thing. I feel like there's this whole theme, or at least throughout this episode, of the people with powers, with Regis and M21. You know, you have the power. You have the power, and what are you going to do? You can't just stand there while these kids are going to be killed. You have to do something. So there was that moment where Regis. Well, I won't spoil what I don't want to get into the details too much because I've kind of spoken a lot on things so far, but I think I think after this whole situation, I will say this. I think after this whole situation, because with Regis and Sarah, they really thought that these people are his friends or M21's friends. I think after this whole situation, I think M21 and Regis will have a better understanding. Like they'll be able to see a bit more eye to eye, but they won't be buddy buddy or anything like that. But I think they'll kind of be able to understand each other just a bit more. But with next week's episode, I know next week's episode is going to be pretty good. With Rye, we got Rye coming in at the end, and Kranz is already knocked out. Kranz has already knocked out Regis and everything, so I'm expecting a big fight next week with Rai showing off his powers, and more of Frankenstein versus Takio, who as we've seen, and this is something that since I didn't get to talk about, since I didn't get to talk about last week's episode or the other prior episodes, I'll just say this before I close out. I do like that they have kind of spent the time, or kind of took the time to kind of just flesh out Takio and his whole situation, and how he's kind of a good guy, but he's forced into this bad situation, and then Tao, and how and I like how they kind of they kind of had this sort of for lack of a better word parallel between Tao and Manabu with last week's episode. So like these are the only two characters out of everybody in DA5 that aren't really bad people. They just seem to have been forced into a bad situation. And so yeah, I think that's pretty much all my thoughts on this week's episode. I thought that this was a pretty good episode uh in terms of how it's been handled, the fights and everything, and the decisions the characters make. I'm happy so far with what we've gotten with this show, and I want to apologize for not being able to kind of get the other reviews out there each week. But yeah, hopefully we'll continue with these, getting these really good episodes and everything. So thank you guys for watching this review. Like the video, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think about this week's episode. Thank you guys for watching. I'm out of here. Peace.